and it's grown every year, and we're super excited. The idea really is to talk about, mistakes people make and lessons that they've learned along the way. Later on, Guy Kawasaki is going to talk about this. But just to let you know, I don't know if you noticed, outside we have what I call the farmer's market for startups. About 40 companies that are demoing their products, so go check out what they're doing during the break. And one of these minutes, we're going to get someone to help me out here. Oh, Angelica's here. Angelica's going to lead the next panel here, and I'll get this out of the way.
There is no way I'm going to sit down on the floor. So we got to move that and get
Slide, I just need to come back.
While we're waiting,
I'll tweet everyone while we're waiting.
The hashtag is StartupConf. In case you forget that, it's at the bottom of your program. I'm Angelika Blenstrup, and I'm recently started a Latin American venture fund. We're also building a startup entrepreneurship program just for Latin Americans. So send them our way. And Vivek, introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Vivek Wadhwa. I read, write, I create controversies, and I hang out with Angelica whenever I can.
Hey, I'm Allison Johnston-Rue. I'm the CEO and co-founder of InstaEDU. We're the leading marketplace for online tutoring.
Your thing might already be working.
Hi, I'm Sandy Miller. Is this working?
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. So I run Singularity University's Startup Accelerator, and I manage a very rapidly growing portfolio of about 25 startups at the moment.
All right, why don't we sit down? Do we have enough? If not, I'll stand.
Yeah, we've got 4.
Oh, we have enough. We have 4. I want to grab that one. I'll grab this one. Perfect. So we're going to ask a couple of questions which I think will interest you from this panel. They are all very, very outspoken and sometimes known to be quite controversial for those of you who don't know Vivek. Wrong panelist? Oh, no. Poor Allison, she better do the same, right? So my first question really is, the title is I Can Do It Too, and I know a lot of you are younger entrepreneurs. Can everyone really do it equally? If you say, a lot of people say Silicon Valley, meritocracy, we can come here, we can start a startup, can everyone really do it? Vivek, do you want to start off? Okay. Do that, just take that. We'll just do it the old-fashioned way.
The deck in Silicon Valley is highly rigged by the powers that be. You have an elite crowd, typically the white boys from Stanford who drop out. And then you have a bunch of Indians and some Chinese, mostly young male, who have the advantage. Everyone else is at a disadvantage. You don't fit the pattern. You don't fit the profile. They call it pattern recognition over here, which means that we're legally allowed to discriminate and, and do things which are illegal. However, we put fancy words around it because we're part of Silicon Valley. We're above the law. We're above what's considered acceptable by society because we're the tech guys and we can create so much value for society. So there's a system here which creates bias against the majority, basically. The minority really has access to capital. They have access to funding. They have advantages which others don't. Now, that's the bad news. That's how it's been. Right. But the good news is that moving forward, the playing field is becoming highly level. The venture capital community, which I'm very critical about, used to be critical. In Silicon Valley, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, venture capitalists were the kings and kingmakers. When they came on stage, you would bow down. When they went to an event, everyone would huddle around them as if they were movie stars. Now, if you look at the dynamics, no one gives a damn about venture capitalists because VC has become irrelevant. The angels have a lot more power right now. They're a lot more important because you need angel-level capital to start a company. Moving forward, you won't even need that. Indeed, if you look at the cost of starting a company, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you needed to buy expensive computers, which cost thousands of dollars. I remember when I started my first company, we set aside $10,000 per desktop. Recently, it was $5,000. Now it's a few $100s, and everyone has one. And then when it comes to storage, we needed racks and racks of servers. Today, you get cloud computing. You scale up as you go. So, and then if you're trying to build world-changing hardware companies, sensor devices, they cost practically nothing. So the cost of doing everything is dropped exponentially.
Awesome.
So you can now have 2 kids literally in a garage doing a startup without raising venture capital. They just need enough food to be able to survive and a place where they can hang out. So the dynamics have changed. So now, out of the blue, you have companies like WhatsApp, who no one even heard of. If you look at Mary Maker's Internet Trends report, which all the VCs worship again, she didn't even mention WhatsApp in it. And 6 months later, along comes Facebook and buys the most expensive acquisition ever of this company that was not even on the radar of Sand Hill Road. That's how much the world has changed. So getting back to your question, the playing field is not level. It has not been level. But moving forward, it doesn't matter. Anyone in this room can create a world-changing company now. That's the magic of being in this era of innovation.
So I'm not going to ask everyone the same question, one and then the next, but please do, if you feel you have something important to say, chime in. Is your microphone working?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cool. So I actually disagree that it really comes down to this discrimination. I think that there's really two core problems for women and minorities outside of perhaps Asian minorities in Silicon Valley. I think one is just background. As women growing up, we were less exposed to technology. That's been a very kind of popular thing. And that's something that we had to fight at the core. It's not that people are discriminating, for example, against women in technology. It's that fewer women want to get into it. There are fewer women who are qualified to be entrepreneurs, to be on boards, simply because they haven't had as much background. And that's something that's easily fixable, but it has to go back to when women are much younger. I think the second thing is just social groups. If you're a white male in his 20s in Silicon Valley, you're surrounded by a lot more white males that also are in tech, and you have that friend and that support group. If you're a minority, be it ethnic or women, chances are fewer of your friends are in those groups. And that's just going to hold you back if you have fewer of those connections. So the biggest way to help people succeed is to help mix those groups, help women and minorities get involved in those. It's not something that is necessarily top down, but just what we're exposing ourselves to, both historically and now.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with you that, is this on? Well, whatever, I don't really love those. I don't agree with you that people stay in their groups. I mean, look at this. There are whites, blacks, pinks, greens, every country, every whatever. I think that's what makes Silicon Valley. People don't hang out white with white and
yeah,
Indian
but you're
with
more
Indian.
likely to be friends with people who are similar to you. So, for example, I have many more female friends than male friends, and that's just the way it's going to be. And yes, I have male friends, I have friends of all races, but in general, people tend to be friends with people with more similarities to them.
Age will change that.
Yeah, but if your friends aren't in tech, you just have fewer of the support groups. I've been very lucky where I actually have a decent number of male friends, I have a decent number of female friends with engineering backgrounds, and that's, I think, really helped me move forward.
Listen, I got to tell you that the majority of women I speak to don't have the advantages you have.
Yeah. I agree.
Right, and if you speak to them, they'll tell you horror stories about how they've been treated, how they've been left out, just because they aren't really good looking, or they happen to be dark skinned, or any variety of factors, and they're left out of the system. It's not that simple. Just hang out with the right people and you're all set. It doesn't work like that.
No, I mean, I agree. I think that one of the reasons I've gotten to where I am today is that I've had a lot of advantages that other women haven't had. My mom's an engineer. I had an aunt growing up who is a serial entrepreneur. I went to Stanford, where I was surrounded by very supportive professors. I had a lot of those advantages.
Stanford itself gives you an unbelievable advantage that no one can overcome, because it gives you branding.
Well, on this
Silicon Valley.
coast, when we're near Harvard, they don't like us. So.
They're just jealous.
Yeah. Sandy, you wanted to give
some...
Yeah,
there's sort of another interesting perspective to bring into this in terms of can anybody do it? Yeah. And I think it's important to think about things beyond Silicon Valley in particular, because the accelerator that I run, Singularity has a global community, right? So we have people in over 80 countries, our alumni. And so with our accelerator, all these startups, some of our startups are not located here. They're located in many different countries. And the thing that is fascinating is to see the role that Silicon Valley is playing for our entrepreneurs who, for a variety of reasons, are basing outside the US in their home countries and cities, but they are coming back and forth. One of the things that's interesting about Silicon Valley is some of the reasons why they're coming back here. There are a few. It's, they can be very cost efficient. As we know, the cost of living here is very high, and they're also picking places to live to the extent that they have that flexibility based on decisions around getting talent that is much less expensive. Because we also, because of the cost of living, as you know, it follows that our workforce here is more expensive. And so there's a pretty interesting phenomenon, and Annalise Aksenian, who wrote sort of the seminal book on Silicon Valley called Regional Advantage.
She's from Berkeley.
Yeah, followed that up with something, and she calls these people new Argonauts. And it is really interesting to see them coming back and forth, and the reasons why they're coming here, and even basing and forming, you know, Delaware Corps for their U.S. operations. So they're coming back here, no surprise, to raise money. They're also coming back here to do business with Silicon Valley law firms who are uniquely dialed in to work with startup companies. And so the fact that you know, you can be almost anywhere, and you're just, and these companies are optimizing based on what they need right now. And they are, what we're seeing are these companies that are incredibly mobile and fluid. And they may, you know, be outside the US for the first couple of years as they're getting started, come back here, get that first seed funding, you know, prove the concept, and then they may ultimately move here as they're growing operations or not. But they're picking that based on what that company needs at the point in time.
All right, another controversial question. How important, now we all have degrees, we're Stanford, we all have higher degrees here, but you know, there's been a lot of debate, especially with Vivek and Peter Thiel. How important is it still for you all doing startups to have a formal education, to have graduated either from a prestigious university or have just finished a degree? Vivek?
Prestigious universities don't count. I mean, it doesn't matter what school you graduate from. You need a basic level of education. You need to know the basics of finance, of management. You need to know how to motivate people. You need to know about the basics about ethics. And more importantly, you need to know how to interact with people. You need to know what's acceptable socially, what's not acceptable. You need to have been rejected. Those are the things which happen at college. So this debate about college, it's really not all about the degree or what course you take or what you learn there. It's more about the, you know, the spirit in which we get to grow up and develop the social sense that we would otherwise not have. So yes, there are some outliers. There are some people who have dropped out of college and become successful, and we tend to put them on a pedestal. But the data shows conclusively that having a degree makes a huge difference. In fact, the earnings, the number of employees hired by companies who are graduates in the tech sector, 45–50% higher than those who don't have similar degrees. So
I didn't know
it's conclusive that the education provides an advantage. So when I debate Peter Thiel, if you look at the Thiel Foundation, you know, this debate has been going on for 4 years right now.
Years, yeah.
He made a big deal about giving kids $100,000. He said that, look, they promised us flying cars. Instead, we got 140 characters. And, you know, these kids don't need to go to school. Look at what happened 4 years later. Complete disaster. Not one success coming out of the Thiel Foundation. Complete disaster. In fact, they ended up refocusing the Thiel Foundation. They didn't have the courage to say, hey, we screwed up over here. We were wrong, and we're pivoting. They quietly pivoted the organization, so now they're providing education. Now it's an alternative education. So it's no longer about, hey, come here, we'll give you $100,000 and you can build a world-changing app anymore. Now it's about, come here, we'll provide you an alternative form of education than what you have at your university, which is fine. When they take elite Stanford students and put them in a different setting, those kids are already very smart, they're selected, they will succeed almost anywhere, especially if you provide them the basics that they need.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sandy.
So I think that what Vivek summarizes is really relevant for what's happening right now in education. I think for people, you know, raise your hand if you have a kid that's maybe starting, you know, from just born to 5 years old. How many people have a kid? Okay. So I mean, one of the things to realize is there's a high chance that the kid who's starting kindergarten, right, who started kindergarten this year, you know, will that kid get a bachelor's degree? Will that still be relevant?
In a formal way.
In a formal way, right? What we think of as a typical four-year degree. There's a very good chance that won't be the case.
They will have AI tutors coaching them through who monitor their learning patterns and customize education for them. It's going to be a different era.
Right, and so I think it's really important to think about the implications. I mean, think about hiring. Think about what we screen for now, right? When we're looking at resumes and so forth, and how you stack that when you're doing a search. It's really fundamentally going to change. So that's one piece. The one thing that I would follow up with Vivek's comment is, I would sort of say it depends, right, in terms of education. And this is something that is going to be interesting to watch as we go forward, because, there are companies, startups, that need a very different sort of skills and are operating in the context of vastly different industry sectors with really different dynamics. So, you look at the
Can you give an example?
Yeah, you look at the tech sector versus anyone operating in a life sciences company with a regulatory path, right? And where the science, when someone's when the technology for that company is basic science level, frankly, there are just some things that some experience that you really need, at the bench, they say, at the bench, which is currently in a research institution. Can certainly also be in like a pharma corporation that has those resources and can take the time to invest. But at the moment, there's just a certain set of skills that you just need some time to get to do all these incredible things that are happening. However, even as I say that, technology and the extent to which it is impacting how even basic science research in the biological sciences, for example, is changing, certainly others, that could start to even out as well. But I would say that that's sort of an area of an exception where there's something that's going to need to address that, even when our kindergartner is, looking ready to look to a career.
Let me ask another question. So Vivek and I are both from overseas. I wasn't born here, he wasn't born here. How many of you are foreign born? Exactly.
That's about 2/3 of the audience. That's amazing.
But that's what makes Silicon Valley so much fun. People ask you, why do you want to live here? This is why. So the question I have, and maybe Allison, because you were born here, how much harder do you think is it to create a startup if you are from overseas, or how many advantages did you get? What do you see?
So I can't compare, obviously, because I wasn't born overseas. Again, I think one of the biggest things is the sort of background that you had growing up. Again, I'll be the first to admit that I was very fortunate to grow up in a background where I was pushed in that way. I think that in some communities you see similar pushes, and in others you don't, or there are just other very important focuses that aren't tech or startups. So it's really going to depend the background that you came from.
Vivek, I know you have strong opinions on that too. Promised you controversy, right?
Well, people born in the United States have an inherent advantage in that they know the culture. But people who come here from abroad are hungry. I mean, what happens is that you are typically the people who come here to study are middle class. We're not getting the absolute poor there. We're getting the most highly educated from abroad. They come here. They were at the middle or top of the social ladder back home. They come over here and they're treated like shit. Basically, they're foreigners. They look different. They smell different. They dress different. And they look down at. And they have this burning desire in their belly to rise, to get back to the level that they were at, and they work extremely hard.
But who do you think looks now? Honestly, I've lived here since 1997.
Angelica, Silicon Valley is a bubble. It's a, if you go outside here, go to the South, you'll know. I mean, you're a white woman, so you don't see it. If you happen to be dark-skinned, have an accent, try being a Mexican and being in the South somewhere. The way they treat you, I mean, the way the cops pull you over, try being black. That's even worse than being a Mexican, right? But the fact is that foreigners all have this inherent disadvantage. So they have to come here, they have to prove themselves. Yeah. And they have to work extremely hard, they have to be creative, they help each other. And this is why they end up succeeding. In fact, if you look at the Indian community over here, 30 years ago, the proportion of Indian founded startups in Silicon Valley was 0. People like me were considered beggars and snake charmers. We weren't CEOs. Today, 16% of the startups in Silicon Valley have Indian CEOs or CTOs. That's mind-blowing considering that the Indians constitute 6% of the population over here. So you have a bunch of foreigners who get substandard education in a poor country, coming to Silicon Valley, the most competitive land on this planet, and now out-competing people like Allison. How does that happen? Because they work very hard, they network with each other, and they have a burning desire to change the world.
So, yeah, here. So there's another interesting element to sort of the force of the immigrant entrepreneurs, and it's actually biological in nature. Taryn Rose, for those of the women in the audience who love Taryn Rose shoes, Taryn Rose is a great entrepreneurial story. Vietnamese, came here as a child. Her family had, very little money and landed somewhere in the South. And she's still training as an orthopedic surgeon on her feet all day. She said, gosh, there's got to be, a way to have shoes that are both fashionable and certainly more comfortable. So she started this very successful clothing line, shoe line, and she's going on, she's doing other things. And one of the things that she talks about is there's actually data to support that immigrants tend to have a higher profile in terms of, it gets genetic, right? Where it takes 3 times as much to stimulate them, because it has to do with everything.
What do you mean by stimulate?
To just sort of get the sort of going back to the basic fight or flight, right? And all those things that really
get you going.
Really get us going, and it goes back to some of the the situations that have caused many people's families to initially immigrate to the U.S., right? Because sometimes it's political, it's a whole range of situations, and that does cause some changes that get passed on to that first generation kid who's here. And some of so that's certainly a component. So it's sort of. And there's data. I mean, I saw the study. I've seen the table. That's fascinating to see. And I think the other piece is also you're starting to see, and it'd be interesting to understand how many of you in the audience are doing this. There are folks who've come and had great educations here in the U.S., come from other countries, and as they think about their startup, right? They may be going back home. Places like India, certainly this is happening, to take all of this and bring it back. And I think that's certainly a hard truth that the U.S. needs to and has
get their act together with visas and immigration.
Right.
And make it easier for the students we educate here to stay legally.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I wrote a book about that.
I know you did. I know you wrote a book about it. That's wonderful. Do you have any other story, Vivek, about someone who came from overseas, made it? Besides that, I wrote a whole book about that.
Angelica, you can't walk a block here without bumping into someone who came from dire poverty and now became a multimillionaire over a period of 20 or 30 years by working very hard in Silicon Valley. They're all over the place. Even in this room, I'm sure there is extraordinary wealth, extraordinary success, great stories of hardship and making it big here. To the credit of Silicon Valley, I'm very critical about the Boys Club in Silicon Valley and parts of it. But on the other hand, this is the most inclusive place on this planet, despite everything. The fact is that if you defy the odds and work hard and succeed, you become accepted. And even the people I criticize embrace me. I'm speaking at the National Venture Capital Association this afternoon. I spoke there yesterday. I was delighted how open they were about it. We talked about the exclusion of women. And the heads of the National Venture Capital Association said that we acknowledge that, and we want to do everything we can to fix it.
Well, as you did get a woman on the board of Twitter.
Well, there was a public outcry about that. But the fact is that that's the beauty of Silicon Valley, that it's open to criticism, that it embraces people who dissent, it embraces the dissenters. This is why all of these people can come here and succeed where they couldn't succeed anywhere else. Even in their home countries, they started defying gravity, or if they started standing up against injustice, or if they started building technologies which threatened the incumbents, they could go to jail for that. Here, they get the venture capitalists giving them money.
So we're just going to touch for a minute on the issue of women, because I know a lot of you are men. I'm just wondering, did Sheryl Sandberg...
Isn't it surprising that you're in Silicon Valley, you got 3 women and 1 man on a panel?
You don't think that was
planned? It
planned?
doesn't happen here.
You don't think that was planned? We also have mentors in our accelerator, and I think we have more women than men. And actually,
You'll get kicked out of here.
No, actually, it wasn't planned. These are really smart people. We wanted to get them together. It wasn't really planned. But is there a growing, a changing? I mean, Alison, you've had it good. You might not, have had that fight. Did Sheryl Sandberg's lead-in change anything? Is it having an effect on other women entrepreneurs?
I'm not sure it directly affects Silicon Valley. Obviously, it made it a big topic of conversation, which always helps, just making women in business top of mind. I think that it gets well beyond Silicon Valley, and I think that was our point. It's not just about pushing people to be entrepreneurs or be in tech, but it's pushing them to do whatever it is that they want to do, whether that be a writer or a doctor. It doesn't matter. It's not just about tech.
Anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Alison mentioned earlier in terms of boards is really interesting to think about now for women founders, right, and CEOs of companies. And I had, about 6-8 years ago, a woman who's gone on to sell her medical device company very successfully, just talk about the experience of, she was a first-time CEO, so engineer to founder CEO path. And, going into her first board meeting, where she was the only woman in the room and the CEO, and you really think about the reality of that situation. And so this is...
But what difference did it make that she was a woman and they were men? Did she feel that? I mean,
Yeah.
How?
Well, it's, as a first-time founder CEO, regardless of gender, that's sort of an interesting, there's a lot going on there for you, right, as you're experiencing that. And so then to walk into that boardroom and realize that you're the only woman there, and then, and that's about 8 years ago, and the point is that it's changing very slowly. And the board level is certainly critical, right? It's really important to have a strong board. So it's so Vivek's out there fighting the good fight, and as are others, and it's important. It's not trivial, and we need to, if anything, probably turn up the volume on the issue.
See, I just want to disagree a little bit there. I mean, everyone has had different experiences, so I don't want to discredit your friend's experience by any means. But is walking to the boardroom for the first time as a first-time CEO and founder intimidating? Yes, absolutely. Everything is when you're a first-time CEO and founder. But I'm the only woman on my board, and I've never felt excluded against, or like I'm fighting an uphill battle because of gender. It's simply because I'm a first-time CEO and founder, and there's a lot to get done. Yeah,
so I can actually add a little bit more color to this. It's sort of fun. One of the examples is the chairman of this board, had a group every year, and the way that they sort of bonded, he was an investor involved in several companies, and he would take the CEOs to a golfing retreat every year. And he was a great mentor to her, and she wasn't invited. She's like, I don't golf.
Oh my God.
So do I have to take up golf lessons, so I can go on the trip and have that great relationship with that guy? So it's just sort of, that's sort of the reality. I was giving a talk with Tina Seelig at Stanford years ago when I was at Stanford. We were driving up together, and we met and saw this group of men meet at a big Mercedes, and at a park and ride place, and they were all putting their golf bags in the trunk of this Mercedes, and it was like a Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. and I just went, that's like business for them. It's like, and I go, Tina, we don't do that. What, do your friends? I mean, how does that happen? And so, we came up with some other ways to address that that were very effective. But these are just sort of the realities of that socialization and those relationships and the communications that happen outside the boardroom, which are actually perhaps even more important than what happens inside the boardroom. So it's at that level that this stuff can sort of creep in.
So So I think that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's get back to what I was saying earlier that you were disagreeing with, where you're going to hang out with people that have similarities to you, and that can be interests. And I think gender is a great example of where you see different gender groups that may not be intentionally discriminating against, but more men play golf than women, and it's not necessarily men play golf and women don't, but you're going to see those groups form simply because of interests.
Let's differentiate between startup boards, which is what we're talking about here, and corporate boards of public companies. That startup boards really is investors, friends, people who can network. They really don't matter much. When you have public companies, then you have responsibility to your shareholders and the public. That's when you must have diversity. Startup boards, I typically just ignore them because it's really a formality, and it gives you in the habit of feeling important by going to a board meeting. No one really takes a board seriously anyway. You're going to do what you're going to do. You're going to do all you can to survive. And that's what happens in startups.
I think differently about boards, by the way.
Okay, one question short, and then I have a short round of short questions. I do a lot of pitch training with startups. How do you find a mentor? How do you approach people that you think are fabulous and say, they're not going to go up and say, Vivek, would you mentor me? And I'm not talking about you here because you're all so incredibly busy. But how do people, startups, find mentors that will really help them?
In my opinion, by far the best mentors I've found have been other entrepreneurs that I've worked with. So again, I was very lucky to work for a few startups before starting my own company with very talented founders who have all been very generous of their time now. 2 of them are actually angel investors in our company.
Yay,
so I think having the chance to work for a few startups, whether it's an internship or a first job after college, can help you find really talented people. And in my experience, again, I've been fortunate, but I've seen all of them be willing to sort of pay it forward and help us out.
Yeah, that's true. Sandy, just short sentence or two?
Yeah, so the truth is that you need an array of mentors because you're solving different problems every single day. So you need people who can help you with that incredible range of problems.
I know, but how do you approach them? So you're here, you're from India, from China, from Germany, France.
The likelihood of them getting a Bill Draper or a Mark Zuckerberg or someone of that caliber to be their mentor is zero because people don't have time. What they should do is, you have to realize is that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. People who have done it before have experience that's invaluable. Yeah. So you don't need to find these celebrities. You need to find people who have been through the startup process before and realize that no one person has the answers you're looking for. They have their own experience, and they can provide you with a good frame of reference. They can provide you good feedback on what you're doing. But you have to ask a variety of people, just like Alison and Sandy said. Yeah. So get a variety of people helping you in different areas and expect that no one will give you the right answer. That you really are triangulating and trying to figure out what you can learn from each person. Yeah. And then when you do approach famous people, don't ask them dumb questions, don't waste their time. Ask them specific questions. And
in their area of expertise?
In their area of expertise, and then form a relationship over time. I mean, I get hundreds of emails every day.
I know you do.
I respond to every one of them.
I know you do.
And what happens is that with some people, you form relationships. You wrote to me, God, how many years ago was that?
4, 5?
No, you wrote to me about 7, 8, 9 years ago.
I wrote a book called They Made It, where I interviewed foreign-born executives. And Vivek had this fabulous report on the percentage, 55% of all startups
must have been about 10 years ago you wrote to me.
I don't remember, but I wrote to you, yeah.
And I responded to you, and then you wrote to me 6 months later. Yeah. And we stayed in touch, and then when I moved over here, then I met you, and we became friends. Yeah. That's how the system works. So don't expect someone to go up to someone and say, will you be my mentor? The answer is no, I don't have time for you. Yeah. But if you ask them intelligent questions, most great people will give back. You'll find that there's a difference between great people and ordinary people, that people who truly deserve success are always willing to help other people. They know that they got there because of their humility. It wasn't, there's some one-trick ponies in Silicon Valley who just lucked out and they believe their own press. They believe that they're gods because they happen to be at the right place at the right time. Forget those people. They'll be arrogant as hell. They'll give you the wrong advice. You don't want to know them. There are other people who've been through, failure several times. They worked extremely hard. They had other people mentor them. They're grateful for the help that they got, and now they want to pay it forward. So they're the ones to approach. That's what
TIE does. TIE,
there are a lot of organizations. That's the beauty of Silicon Valley, that this place is rich in great people. So find those people and go to them tactically. Don't waste their time, but go to them for specific advice that you need when you need it.
Really good advice. All right, quick round. One, Tesla or hybrid Porsche?
No, Tesla it's a spaceship that travels
He
on
already
land.
owns a Tesla. Allison?
Yeah.
Tesla or Porsche hybrid?
I don't even own a car.
Okay. What would you choose?
Tesla.
Tesla.
All right, Tesla.
Sandy? Tesla or hybrid Porsche? Quick, this is a quick round.
Flying car.
Okay,
No.
flying car, absolutely.
Tesla.
Wall Street Journal or New York Times?
Both. Actually, I have to say Wall Street Journal because I write for the Wall Street Journal. So Wall Street
interesting.
Journal it is.
Okay, Allison?
New York Times.
Sandy?
Both.
Both, wow.
Actually, Washington Post, number one.
Well, of course, he writes for Washington Post, okay. Pando Daily or TechCrunch?
No comment.
No comment. I knew that was a difficult question. How about both, right? Both. Facebook or Twitter?
I tweet and I just copy my tweets to Facebook. But Facebook is more useful than Twitter is.
Okay. Allison?
They both have their own advantages. I gotta
Oh
say
my
both.
God, they're wimping out
Twitter.
here.
I'll say Twitter.
All right, Twitter. University Cafe or Coupa?
Coupa is cooler.
Are they really different? I mean,
I don't know. Allison?
It's easier to get a table at University Cafe.
Okay,
University
exactly.
Cafe has better shakes. I mean, better
Okay, all right.
smoothies.
Bitcoin or Square?
Forget it. They're
Allison?
both going to fail.
Wow.
Bitcoin's gonna fail?
There'll be another generation that comes along, another technology which
Right.
eclipses both of them.
Sandy?
Because they both have problems.
Or Allison?
I mean, I have to say Square. I've never gotten into Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I'm just starting. You?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think to Vivek's point, I don't know Bitcoin's the solution, but there's something that's going to.
Digital
There's definitely
currencies are going to be
something
the
there.
future, but we don't know which one it is, and they're going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, so I think that's more important.
Now, a
than
really tough question.
Hey, I have
Stanford or
an
Berkeley?
article in the Wall Street Journal that goes online this afternoon about that exact topic, about the disruption that's going to happen where the competition comes from. So go to Wall Street Journal Accelerator's blog and look for my piece this afternoon. It addresses that issue.
Great, great. Stanford or Berkeley? I went to
card.
both, so I don't have to choose.
Stanford, because I'm at Stanford now. Berkeley, before I used to be there.
Exactly. Allison, of course, Stanford. Sandy?
13 years at Stanford.
All right, we're all Stanford. Last ones. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive. I know it's kind of a typical question. Who would you have it? You can have dinner with anyone, Vivek. I know
I'll
that.
have dinner with you, my friend.
Oh my God, I didn't pay him for this. Oh, thank you so much.
But you're going to pay for it. I'm just kidding.
I will cook. I'll cook it. How's that?
I'll pay, don't worry.
No, I'll cook. Allison?
I'm most interested actually in political leaders. Someone
Sure.
out of the box, like maybe Kim Jong-il.
Okay,
That'd
yeah,
be a
very
pretty
interesting.
fascinating dinner, no?
Oh, absolutely. I said dead or alive.
Let him pay, okay?
Exactly. Sandy?
Probably the Dalai Lama.
Very interesting, yeah. I don't know if we have time for a question or two. Where is Consuelo? Oh, quickly. No, not Consuelo, sorry. Caroline, sorry, got nationalities mixed up. Do you have just a quick question? Anyone burning question you want to ask? Yes, just shout. Oh yeah, shoot, we forgot the word.
Oh my
How
God,
about
don't get me started.
ageism?
Don't get me
Ageism in
started on
Silicon
that
Valley?
one. You have famous venture capitalists saying that people die in ideas after 35. Complete bullshit. I mean, the average age of a tech entrepreneur is 39. There are twice as many over 50 as under 25, twice as many over 60 as under 20 who are successful. So don't accept this nonsense that you are over the hill. In fact, if you are experienced, you're more likely to succeed. Now, it does help to have some young kids who have harebrained schemes in their heads, I mean, who have weird ideas working with you because they can think outside the box and they're not bound by the challenges you faced, and they're not as hampered as they are by the experience. So team up with some young people, but we need old and young working together.
I'll just add to that. One of the best teams I've ever worked on is when we had people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Go on.
I mean, that's just awesome, right? And that's the point. I think right now you need all of that, and we all learn from each other, and the interdisciplinary mix. That's more important.
I agree. Last one. Sorry. Go ahead.
Hi.
Wait.
We're combining our question here, and
It has to be really fast and direct.
Okay.
No long explanations.
So, question is in terms of getting funding. So, for me as a female entrepreneur, how can I get funding? And for him as a man with a wife and kids, how do you get funding?
Don't even try. Just go and bootstrap it however it takes. Beg, borrow, steal from your friends. Raise some angel capital if you can. And when your company doesn't need funding anymore, the VCs will be begging you to take their money.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, we have to stop. Thank you very much, Vivek, Allison, and Sandy. Thank you. Thank you all for your attention.
That was awesome.
Perfect. It was, well, it's the panel. Do you want us to